And happy March. It's time for madness, Trog fans, all NCAA men's basketball fans. This is your TrogCast, two really old guys talking NCAA men's basketball. Got a lot on track for you here as we get into tournament week. Jim and I are going to be making our predictions about the upcoming Power Conferences tournaments, talk a little bit about the tournaments that went on last week, and go with a review of how we predicted our conference champions at the beginning of the season. But we'll just start by saying hello to Mr. Reaker on this first program of ours in March.
How you doing, Jeff? It is March, and we, as a NCAA basketball fan, we always look forward to March, and it's starting to get crazy this week already with some of the lower-level conference tournaments already kicking off, and a few of them already finished.
Yep, that it is, and we'll be talking about that in just a little bit and how that might affect the tournament bids, as we talked about a little bit last week. And, of course, by the time we get to this time next week, we'll be previewing the play-in games. Those will be next Tuesday, and we'll know what the field of 64 is, so we can have a little fun with picking some slots like we will for the conference tournaments. But let's look back just very briefly here. Beginning of the year, you and I, we divided up the six power tournaments, power conferences, the Big 10, Big 12, and Big East for you, and the ACC, SEC, and Pac-12 to me. And we made our predictions on who we thought was going to be there at the end. And I don't know if you want to do all 3 years, Jim, or one or two and turn it back to me, but how'd you do?
Well, start with the Big Ten. I actually picked Wisconsin to start the season, and Wisconsin finished second, I believe, behind Purdue, although I will say we looked actually, yeah, they were tied with Maryland in second. A couple weeks ago, I kind of revised that a little bit. I know we're still sticking with our original, but I had said Purdue was really trending. Purdue, kind of a surprise. They were supposed to be pretty good, but they really turned it on this year with Biggie Swanigan, who a lot of people think will be player of the year in the Big Ten, and some people are even touting him as big player or player of the year nationally. So I missed that one from the beginning of the season, but again, I kind of saw Purdue trending. Big 12, that wasn't hard. You had Kansas coming in with 12 in a row, and I made the tough decision to go with them again. And, of course, the Jayhawks did win their 13th Big 12 regular season championship in a row. And, of course, some people think now that they might be the odds-on favorite, although in this crazy year, is there an odds-on favorite to win the whole thing? And then finally the Big East. And, again, it wasn't real tough. You had defending national champion Villanova, who had 3 returning starters. And, of course, under Jay Wright, they've just done so well in the last few years. It wasn't tough to pick them to win the Big East. And, of course, they did win the Big East. And they're probably maybe on a number 1 seed also. So I think mine were a little bit easier than yours. You want to talk about yours for a few minutes?
Well, yeah, you did well there. You got 2 out of 3, and with Wisconsin there, I think that's it's an unfortunate thing it often happens when you go from a longtime head coach down to their assistant. The culture changes over the time. You know, they came in as basically Bo Ryan's team, but being Greg Gard at the end, they sort of faded. They'll still go to the dance, and they're going to be a good team. I don't think they're going to be as powerful as they were. And congratulations to Kansas, too. You mentioned there many in a row. They actually tied UCLA for the most conference wins in a row. So congratulations to Bill Self. For me, a couple of them I did hit. I mean, I did push on the ACC a little bit. I said I thought the winner was going to be the winner of that game last Saturday between North Carolina and Duke. Now, I thought that would be for the conference championship. It wasn't. North Carolina had it all locked up, but, hey, I'm going to take the win. North Carolina did win that game, so I called that one correctly. And the SEC as well, and it wasn't that hard, much like a couple of years. It was Kentucky, even though Florida gave them a good run for it and might be able to do something when it comes to the tournament. Kentucky won that by 2 games, and a couple of surprises there by the SEC, as we'll talk about. The one that I dismissed, but was my sort of guess pick, was I thought Arizona would come together when they got healthy and get past everybody in the Pac-12 They didn't do that. They finished second to Oregon on the tiebreaker because they and Oregon only played once, and that was in Oregon. They finished with identical conference records and overall records. And, Arizona's 2 losses in the conference were to their rivals, Oregon and UCLA, whereas Oregon, they lost to UCLA, but they also lost to Colorado. So Oregon just slipped by there, so I just missed that one. Happy with that pick. All 3 of them are going to the dance, so it really doesn't matter that much, and we'll see where it goes from here.
Yeah, I almost have to give you that. Pac-12 is actually a tie. I guess there is a tiebreaker as far as the number 1 seed, but they Arizona and Oregon, of course, finished with identical 16-2 records in the league. So you did pretty well also.
Yeah. Well, that leads us to what we talked about a bit last week. The power conferences will all have their tournaments this week. About 21 of them, I think, their conferences will begin. A lot of them, though, began last week, the smaller one. And these are the ones that are more important for these smaller conferences, or what they call the mid-majors, or however you want to categorize those. But I'll just quickly go down some of the things that happen. The problem there, and this is the thing we discussed last week, is sometimes you have a really, really strong regular season, and then you go into the tournament and you lose one game. And since the NCAA automatic bid goes with the tournament winner, you're going to see some teams that are really good that probably have missed out on the chance to go to the NCAA because these power conferences have so many teams that are doing so well. Very quickly, some of those, in the American East, tomorrow night, Vermont will play Albany, and Vermont's one of those teams that has a really strong record. They were undefeated in their league, but they're in the final game, so they've got it in their own hands. In the Atlantic Sun, Florida Gulf Coast held up their number 1 seed, and so they'll be in the Big South. Winthrop as well had a strong regular season and was able to hold on to that. It probably means that North Carolina Asheville will not get a bid, even though they were a very strong team in there, going 23-9, and they tied Winthrop. Winthrop had won the tiebreaker. North Carolina Wilmington won last night in the Colonial, so they're in. One of the surprises has been the Horizon. Oakland, Michigan, which was the top seed and pretty much ran away with that conference, had lost early, and so did Valparaiso, which had tied them for their record. In fact, it's the number 4 seed, Northern Kentucky, which will play Wisconsin-Milwaukee, the number 10 seed, tonight in their conference final. So there's one of those things. Both Valpo and Oakland 24-8, and it's they're not going to give 2 bids to Horizon League. Another one that lost out probably is Monmouth, who was 18-2 in their league, and the MAC, and 27-6, but they lost to Siena, and Siena lost last night in the conference final, so Iona will go. Wichita State held ground in the Missouri Valley Conference, and they probably would have gone anyway. That's one of the ones. Now the question would be, will Illinois State, who took them to a very close game there in the season, but lost by 20 in the final game, whether or not they're going to get a bid. Tonight in the Northeast Conference, the NEC, Mount St. Mary's, who we talked about, not a really strong record, but very, very difficult off-conference record. They're in the final game against St. Francis. Another one that's a bit of a surprise is the Jacksonville State Gamecocks, who were the 4 seed in the Ohio Valley, beat out Belmont, who was 15-1, and UTennessee Martin, both of whom a lot of people thought were tournament ready, but it'll be Jacksonville State going there. Also in the Southern League last night, East Tennessee State knocked out the number 1 seed, North Carolina Greensboro. Now, it's not that big of an upset. They both had identical conference records, and actually East Tennessee State had a slightly better season record. I'm sure you'll have something to say, but unfortunately your Mastodons went out in the first round in the Summit League, and that's going to go down to just one team out of there. And they've held form in the West Coast Conference. Gonzaga will play St. Mary's. Both of those are in, so the only way somebody could have gotten that was to play in. And before we talk about some of the lesser teams in other tournaments this week, you got any thoughts on those few upsets there in the smaller tournaments?
Yeah, I wanted to talk a little bit about the NKU-Milwaukee game tonight. Yeah, that was talk about madness and craziness. The top 3 seeds in the Horizon lost on the first day. And history will be made tonight. And, of course, Jeff and I are fairly close to part of that history if it happens. Northern Kentucky University in their first year eligible because they had to take a moratorium because the NCAA created that as many teams were trying to move to Division I. They thought that they were doing that to try to share in the money, so they put teams or schools on a moratorium when they entered the NCAA. This is the first year that NKU has been eligible, and they have a strong possibility of winning that Horizon League championship over a surprise Milwaukee and, of course, bring them a bid into the NCAA. And just reading this morning, and I think Mick Cronin talked about how he thinks the committee sometimes does some matching of schools in the first and second round to create interest, maybe sell tickets, but even better to create interest so people watch it on TV for sponsorship. You know, if NKU makes it, people are saying they'll probably be a 15 seed. Well, there's 2 other schools in Kentucky that look right now like they're going to be 2 seeds. That would be Louisville and, of course, UK. And so that could be a first-round matchup. Would the committee do that if the NKU Norse do make it? Another fact about the NKU Norse, along with UCLA, they made the biggest turnaround from one year to the next. They had 13 more wins already than they had last year. And, again, they tied that with UCLA, who had a very, very down year last year. And, of course, we know what they've done this year with Lonzo Ball, and Steve Alford's really turned that program around. But maybe even more interesting, there's going to be a good story come out of this tonight, whatever happens. Milwaukee, or University of Wisconsin at Milwaukee, could become the first team ever to make the NCAA tournament with 20 or more losses. They currently are, or actually, I think they entered the Horizon tournament at 8-23, and they had a 4-14 record. And just to follow this story even further, they had the 10 seed. They were the 10th seed out of 10 teams, and so they had to play actually kind of a play-in game initially up there in Detroit, and the fact they had to play Detroit, who was playing in their home city, the number 7 seed. And they won that game fairly easily. Then they turned around and, of course, beat Valpo, who was the number 2 seed, in a defensive struggle, beat them 43-41. And then last night in the semifinals, they beat the University of Illinois at Chicago, the Flames, who were the number 6 seed. So if they would win tonight, again, they would be the first team with 20 or more losses to be in the NCAA tournament. Another thing is they will have won more games or the same amount of games in the tournament as they won in the league all year long. They had a 7-game losing streak that started in December, and they finished the year on a 9-game losing streak. So when you want to talk about Cinderella, the Milwaukee Panthers are going to be the Cinderella story if they would happen to beat the NKU Norse tonight. And again, if NKU wins, that's going to be a big story too. First time they were eligible, and they're in the big dance. So that's just really interesting. Of course, where Jeff and I live, there's a lot going on in the media surrounding the NKU Norse. The other point I would make is, Belmont. I think it might be a sad Sunday for them because they had a great record. They were the number 1 seed, but losing to Jacksonville State, who that's their first bid ever. That I don't think will sit too well with the committee, and Belmont might be in the NIT. And again, we've talked about it before with the power conferences having such even there's so much parity in them that we're going to see big numbers coming out of them this year, and that's going to hurt these mid-majors, and especially these ones who had number 1 or 2 seeds in their tournament and just couldn't pull it off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good. What would be even more interesting is if they lined up NKU with UC, who would play. Cincinnati will be playing their home game at Northern Kentucky next year while they renovate the Fifth Third Arena. That would be their first chance there. That's the story of March, and it would be interesting if whoever's in, they're going to make nice cannon fodder for that number 2 seed, even though just about every year you have a number 15 really challenge the number 2, so you never know what's going to happen. A couple of other ones that you're going to have to keep your eye on is UT Arlington has been the darling of a lot of people. Very early in the year, they were picked to be. They were actually in Joe Lunardi's first bracketology. They're sitting at 14-4, 24-7 in the Sun Belt. Nevada could be in trouble in the Mountain West. They're about the only one there, but if they slip up, there's not going to be 2 groups coming out of the Mountain West. You also have North Carolina Central and the MEAC. They've pretty much been the strong one there. In fact, they're the only team in their conference that has a winning record. Norfolk State is 15-15. North Carolina Central is at 22-8. But if they would slip up, again, not 2 going to come out of the MEAC. And of course, another one that's going to have to worry about is Princeton. They finished the Ivy League 14-0, and until this year, the regular season champion has always been the Ivy League representative, but there's a 4-team playoff that will happen this week, and if they happen to slip up, one of the other 3, Harvard, Yale, or Penn, will be the representative. So lots of things going on there. Any thoughts before we go to the big conferences? I don't know what's going on there at your house, Mr. Reaker. Sounds like you're in the dentist chair, sucking with a little thing in your mouth, sucking water out of it.
Sorry about that. I think maybe my microphone here is caught up in my shirt, so maybe that's the problem. We'll readjust here. Is that a little bit better? Maybe I'm just tired this morning. The excitement of March Madness takes it out of you sometimes.
Maybe I put you to sleep and you were snoring. I don't know.
No. Let's move on to the power conferences. Of course, the ones we've talked about a lot all year.
And this is where Jim and I will go to our challenge. And I get to the challenge and then make sure I understand the challenge, the gauntlet that's been thrown down. Our job in the next few minutes is to determine how many teams from each conference will end up in the NCAA draw and who the conference tournament winner will be. And that would be a total of 6 points there that we can get on each side, and then it will be who we go from there. Am I understanding you correctly? You're going to pick your 3, and I'm going to pick my 3, and whoever has the most points out of those 6 is the winner for an ice cream sundae or our favorite cold beverage, as always.
That you have the rules correct, and the only thing I wanted to verify that we're going to bet for something cold, ice cream or an adult beverage.
Yeah, that's right. All right, so I just flipped the coin, came up heads. You win, so you want to go first or defer? We'll alternate conferences. You have to do all 3 years.
Okay. I'll go first. I'll start with the Big Ten. The Big Ten is, I'm going to look at this real quick, make sure I took some notes, and I'm going with 7 bids out of the Big Ten, and that goes down the standings, Purdue down through Michigan State. So 7 bids. The 8th bid would be Iowa, and I think Iowa has to do something, maybe win a couple games in the tournament in order that they might get a bid, but they finished with an 18-13 record, but has a 10-8 record in the league. So I'm going to go with 7 bids for the Big Ten, and this is probably the hardest one to pick, the winner, because I think there's maybe any of those 7 could win it. I just think there's a lot of parity in the Big Ten. So I'm going to go with Purdue. They've been playing very well lately. They just had a big win at Northwestern on Sunday before a national crowd. And I just think, again, that they have gotten better and better as the year goes on. And, again, with Biggie Swanigan, I think the Boilermakers will win the Big Ten tournament, which this year I think maybe for the first time I have to check, but they usually play that in Indianapolis. But I saw that's being played in Washington D.C. this year.
Washington this year. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, okay. That's bold. I mean, that goes right. Your bids go right in tune with what Joe Lenardi had in his bracket at the beginning of this week. And of course, as always, the complicator to any of these is what happens in these tournaments and whether or not they can go. Okay. I'll start then with the SEC. They've got their tournament in Nashville. I say the locks that are in are Kentucky and Florida. There's no way they don't get in. They fought all year against each other. And the probables that are in are South Carolina and Arkansas, both strong seasons. So they're going to get at least 4. There's a possibility for a 5th. There's a couple of hopefuls there, and in particular Vanderbilt. And of course, they're playing their tournament in Nashville, which would be Vandy's home area. And then you got teams like Ole Miss, Alabama, and Georgia. They would need to win it all in order to get into the dance. So this is a tournament, that it's always tough, as we talked about, Jim, because when you're a Kentucky and a Florida, you're in, and how spirited are you? Do you rest up? Is that big a thing? In the ACC, it's that big a thing. We'll talk about that in a minute. I mean, teams want to win that tournament, and it's cost them in the past. But I think, looking at the brackets, that Kentucky has the easiest slide into that title game. Again, Florida will have to play Vandy on their home court and then come back against Arkansas. So, I mean, it's the safe pick, but I think they're getting strong at the right time. I'm going to go with Kentucky. And I think in the end that the SEC is only going to get 5 bids.
All right. We're being awful conservative today, aren't we?
Well, the SEC is, I can't see, again, the hard part is, does one of those teams rise up and have a good, strong run like Milwaukee did? But the SEC just hasn't been that strong this year. They're not going to get bonus points for the conference.
Yeah, and the fun thing about these tournaments are that the schools with their back against the wall, knowing if they don't win their tournament, they're not going anywhere. Sometimes that's where you get those unbelievable performances or runs in the tournaments, like we talked about, like with Milwaukee.
Yep. So who's next on your slate there?
I'm going to go with the Big 12, and I think it's pretty cut and dry, 5 bids. I can't see Kansas State unless they win the tournament getting in because they had a losing record in the conference overall at 8-10. So I think, the top 4 all ranked in the top 25, Kansas, Baylor, West Virginia, and Iowa State are all in no matter what happens. But I'm going to say Oklahoma State, they had a 500 record in a tough Big 12, and they're 20-11 overall. So I think Oklahoma State is also going to be in. So I'm giving the Big 12 5 bids. And, somewhere along the line, you gotta call an upset. So here's where I'm going to pull mine out, and I'm going to go with Iowa State. Again, Kansas might get the number 1 seed. I think they're positioned for the number 1 seed overall in the NCAA. But again, I think maybe they will not have the fire underneath them. We've seen they've been able to be beaten. Actually, Iowa State beat them at Fog Allen this year. So I'm looking for the Cyclones to pull an upset again and to win the Big 12 over Kansas, West Virginia, and Baylor. But again, I'm going to stick with 5 bids for the Big 12.
Yes. You heard it first here from Jimmy the Reek. There's your upset coming in, and it's kind of hard there. They're playing that tournament in Kansas City, and Iowa State would have to beat the Oklahoma State team you're talking about, which might have a little more incentive to win. They're at the 4 and 5 seeds to go to Kentucky, knowing that Oklahoma State's more on the bubble than the Cyclones. We'll see as we go. That's the fun of it. We'll know all of it by this time next week. We're going to save the fun bunch for last, and we'll go to the Pac-12, which at the beginning of the season, I'm sure you remember, Jim, I said I'd love for the Pac-12 to be relevant again, and it is, but it's not going to get as much of a power group in there. When you're looking at the Pac-12, you know that Oregon, Arizona, and UCLA are in, and they're all vying for quite possibly probably the second seed in the West. And you just mentioned that the key to that is usually when you're the first or second seed in your bracket, you sort of stay geographically where you are. Whereas if you end up the third or fourth seed, you might get moved geographically. So that's going to be very important. A lot of people right now have both Arizona and UCLA as a 3 seed. So them winning that tournament would probably push them up to a 2. It's doubtful they're going to go above a 1 now that we know Gonzaga's in their final game and will probably beat St. Mary's. So they're probably going to be the 1 in the West. So those 3 definitely, I would say Southern California, Andy Enfield's done a great job, and they'll want to see them back in. So 4 seeds are a lock. What may happen is there could be a 5th seed. I don't know. It depends upon their tournament run. Utah and Cal were looking good there, but they faded toward the end. They're probably going to play each other in the second round. The winner of that one could do it. Cal's got to play an extra game, being the 5th seed, whereas Utah is the 4th seed. I could see one of them sneaking in, but looking at some of these upsets going on, I'm going to have to go with just 4 bids for the Pac-10, or excuse me, the Pac-12. Used to be the Pac-10. And it's funny here, their tournament is in Las Vegas, which has nothing to do with the Pac-12. There's no team there. It's just for the money aspect. But I think here at the end, because they need it, it's going to be UCLA. And I haven't been on the UCLA bandwagon all year, but they're playing tough right now. They're going to have to play the winner of the USC-Washington game and then probably turn right around and play Arizona and then face Oregon. But Steve Alford's got them there, and I think they really want to get that second seed. So 4 bids in the Pac-12, UCLA, the champ.
All right. I've got my notes down here. I'm taking notes so when we have to verify this next week, we can remember what we said. So let's move to the Big East. Big East is a tough one. My head keeps telling me 6 bids. This is a conference that has benefited from parity. You know, from 3 through 7, there's only a game difference there. The problem you have is Xavier, who's finished 7th and, of course, is dear in my heart, looks like they're in maybe, even if they don't win a game in the Big Ten. Of course, we'd like, or the Big East tournament against DePaul again, who they just defeated on Saturday. Hopefully that happens. I think that makes them a steadier choice. The problem is they are ahead of both Seton Hall and Providence in a lot of the key factors, the BPI, strength of schedule, and all that. So, and you know the conference, or excuse me, the committee looks at that very, very closely. So I'm going to go with 7 bids, and that kind of worries me because I think if Xavier would lose to DePaul, maybe they don't make it and they only get 6. Marquette, who's been kind of hot lately, they might be on the bubble too if they don't win their first game. And I believe they play, well, I believe it would be Creighton, but I'm not sure about that. So I'm going to go with, I'm going to stop stumbling around here and just tell you 7 bids. That's what I'm going with. And my choice to win it all, again, I'm not going to step out too far here, although the Big East tournament is usually one of the most exciting and offers a lot of upsets, but I'm going to go with Villanova being able to plow their way through that tournament and probably get them a number 1 seed going into the big dance.
Yeah. Well, I agree. It's a tough one to pick because I'm with you. If Xavier loses tomorrow night, I think they could be out even with all those things because they played so poorly down the stretch. And one of the factors, and we'll talk about this on Thursday with our Razorcast, of course, we'll know by then, is they want to see how well teams are playing come tournament time. And they did beat DePaul in Chicago. They were going to have to repeat that. Then I think a strong game against Butler after that would certainly cement it. So that's the other thing about it. So we got your picks, and we'll see where they are next week. And of course, then that brings us down to the fun bunch, which is the ACC, which people have gone back and said they could have everybody but Boston College into it, to God knows who else. And this is one of the tough ones because there are several teams that could probably step up and win this. They've been beating up on each other all year. They always do that. I'm going to say right now there's 6 teams that are locked in. There's no way the committee's going to refuse North Carolina, Duke, Florida State, Notre Dame, Louisville, or Virginia. Of course, they're all in the top 25, as there's been many. And I'd say the probables that are in are Miami and Virginia Tech. They both had very strong endings to their season, and so that gives them 8 right there. Now, the question marks in the ACC are teams like Syracuse, which has had some magnificent upsets, and they have wormed their way into a good spot in the standings just behind Miami, but with a little less of a record. I mean, so they're the next one there, and but they haven't done much on the road. Now they've got to travel to Brooklyn, which is in New York, but it's not Syracuse for this tournament. And then, of course, you've got Wake Forest. Danny Manning's done a great job there this year. They're just 9-9 in the conference, but that's even better than they thought. 18-12. They could sneak in, but I think it all depends upon how that tournament goes, and that's what's always hard. They've got to play these games. Wake Forest has got to play Boston College, and then turn around and play Virginia Tech. And I think they could get past both of those and then run into Florida State. A strong run by Wake is going to get them in. Syracuse comes right up against Miami, and I think that's going to be tough. And an early loss, you just don't know what's going to happen. So right now, I'm going to say, and this is the one that's the trickiest because it could go 10 easily. It could go down to 8, so I'm going to stop in the middle and say 9 bids for the ACC. If they're really feeling generous, they might even go up to 11 and put Georgia Tech in there. But I think when it comes to the tournament, any one of those top 6 teams could win it, but I'm just going to go with the fact that North Carolina is playing the best right now, and they've got the road into the final. So North Carolina, 9 bids for the ACC.
Yeah, that definitely is the toughest. I'm glad that's your league because, again, there's probably, you said at least 6. I mean, you could see Syracuse get on a roll. They've been playing well lately and maybe win it all. So that's a tough one. And, again, how many? Yeah, you're right. It could be anywhere, I think, between 8 and 11, and a lot remains to be seen what happens in that tournament. That's interesting. I didn't realize that they're playing in New York City also.
Yep.
So you got 3 of the big 6 playing in New York City this coming week. So that's interesting.
Playing in Brooklyn in the new
Barclays Center.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So lots of things could happen. We'll come back and review that. Of course, like I said, by the time we get here next week, we'll have the full 68, and we can start working on our predictions to go through there. The only other thing that you might ask, we sort of said it, my 4 goes to tournament time, but I think it's going to be Gonzaga, North Carolina, probably Villanova, and the hard thing is that 4th number 1 bid, but I'd definitely say it's going to be North Carolina, Gonzaga, and Kansas, and probably Villanova that are going to get those 4. Do you think any different?
Yeah, no, I think if those 4 probably win their first round game, which, again, all of them have fairly winnable games because of their seeding within their conference. I think unless they stumble in that first round, I think all 4 of those will probably be your top 4 seeds. Again, this is a year that's been parity is the word because there's a lot of teams. I mean, how many teams do you think have a legitimate chance of winning this thing, the whole NCAA tournament? I got to say it's double digits, maybe 15 to 20.
I'm not as optimistic. I think it's been a great year for basketball, but I still think there's about 10 teams maybe. I put it closer to 8 or 9 that are really in great position to do it, but you never know. There's always that Cinderella run, your Butler, your Virginia Commonwealth, your Florida Gulf. You just don't know what's going to happen come tournament time. But I think there's only a few strong teams that can win it all. But that doesn't mean those top 15 that you're talking about won't make noise into the second weekend. All right, that said, I'm sure you've looked up something to do with this that's deep in the archives that you're going to try to stump me with. So go ahead, Stumpy.
I got, as always, a few questions, kind of same topic, but a few different ones I'll throw at you. First of all, a story that's been a great story, and of course was one of you've seen it time and time again on Sports Center, the end of the Northwestern Michigan game, which most people think sealed a bid for the Northwestern Wildcats for the first time in their history. Mm-hmm. Well, I looked back. There are only 5 original members to Division I NCAA basketball who have not made the tournament. Can you name the 5? And, of course, one of them should be really easy. This is a tough question.
That's pretty easy one. You just mentioned it. I mean, you had to dig really deep for that one. The 5 that have never made it to the tournament, to be quite honest, I don't care. They never made it to the tournament. You know?
Yeah, this is very it's a very tough question. Actually, one of them is St. Francis of New York, and you mentioned they're playing in the final game of their tournament tonight, I believe. So that could be another one making it for the first time. The other 3 are the Citadel, William and Mary, and Army. And here's the interesting thing about Army. In 1968, Army received a bid but turned it down, and we talked about this a lot last week, turned it down to go to the NIT instead. But here's a question for you. What legendary coach was coaching Army when they turned that bid down?
Oh, that's a great question. Legendary coach, because that's, Bobby Knight was up there and Krzyzewski after him, but that was well before the time. Bobby Knight was still at Ohio State then, so it couldn't have been him. A legendary coach at Army. If it was football, I might have gone and helped you out, but I've got to give it to you. In that one, you got me stumped.
Now it is Bobby Knight. 1968, Bobby Knight was the head coach at Army, and he was the one that turned down the NCAA bid for an NIT bid.
Oh, I thought you said 58. Oh, that's what threw me off.
68. Okay. Sorry.
Enunciate, toy boat. Do your vocal like that. That's what probably need to clean out my ears. Yeah.
Okay. One more question. This one should be fairly easy. You should come close anyway on this one. Let's go to the other end of the spectrum. Name the 4 programs that have the most bids in NCAA tournament history.
Oh, that's a good one. You would have to go with the powers. I'm sure there's one sleeper in there we're not going to get, but I would definitely say Kentucky's got to be in there.
You are correct.
It'd be an inclination to say UCLA, but they didn't go for many years, and then they had a spell there, so I'm going to hold off on them for a little bit. North Carolina's been going for years, so I'll go with that as a second choice.
That is correct.
Okay. So many great programs to choose from. We got Kentucky, we got North Carolina. You got to go with the Dukies. I would think that they're very high, maybe not in the top 4, but close.
Not in the top 4, so that one is incorrect. One more guess.
Oh, there's just, my God. And this is where you go blank sometimes, overthinking the question because there's so many possibilities out there. Let's say closer to home and say just maybe somebody like Dayton that went many, many, many years. People forget how strong Dayton was in the 60s and 70s and then through the A-10 years.
You're incorrect there. You danced around one. UCLA is tied for third, and they are tied with Kansas. So a rundown, just the order. Kentucky has 55 bids, North Carolina 47, and Kansas and UCLA are tied with 45. And, of course, all of those are going to go up by a point or a number this year because all of them have had great seasons, and they're going to be in the 2017 field.
Easily. And lots of fun for us just to play with this. Hope it's fun for you listening. We'll be back next Tuesday, and we'll be analyzing the field, and maybe next week Jim will pick who we think are going to be the Sweet 16. Maybe not pick it all the way out, but see who's going to be there. And, of course, we'll be on the air on Thursday with our RazorCast talking about all things Xavier basketball. We'll know the result of their first-round game before we go. Before we drop off, just a few things to say, a couple tidbits. We want to wish a happy 79th birthday to Janet Guthrie, who was the first woman to drive in both the Indianapolis and Daytona 500s, pioneer for female drivers, and went through a lot. I mean, the Jackie Robinson for auto racing in terms of gender. And on this date in 1951, Cincinnati boxing legend Ezzard Charles retained his heavyweight boxing crown by defeating Jersey Joe Walcott. 3 years later in June, Charles would become the only boxer ever to go the full 15 rounds with the great undefeated heavyweight Rocky Marciano. And the last little thing is, on this date in 1991, 26 years ago, the age of 87, we lost James Thomas Bell. You would know him better as Cool Papa Bell. The stalwart of the Negro Baseball Leagues was so fast that the great Satchel Paige liked to say that Bell could turn off the light and be under the covers before the room got dark. There's also another legendary story of his that this is the way things would go to pump up the league, that there was one time he hit a ground ball up the middle, and it hit him as he slid into second base for a double. I don't want to believe either of those, but it's great. Very, very fast and great player who is in the National Hall of Fame as well. Okay, so we will be here with you next Tuesday, and thank you for listening, and please join us on Thursday for our RazorCast.
Enjoy the madness.